Coming live from the studio, this is All Sports with Gerardo. Thank you for watching another episode of All Sports. This is your host Gerardo, and all I talk is sports. On the show today, I am going to talk about the coronavirus, Major League Baseball, and NFL football. Before I start the show, I hope you all had a great week. To start off with the coronavirus, the return of sports. We have started to see the return of sports here in the U.S. and in other countries around the world. Here in the U.S., we have seen NASCAR, UFC, PGA Golf, and now the major sports leagues make a comeback. Hopefully in the next few months, we will also see other sporting events, but especially leagues, either resume or start their season. Also, with the return of sports, we have seen no fans in the stands, no matter if it's here in the U.S. or in other parts of the world. Now that we are in July, the NBA, NHL, and Major League Soccer will resume their season, and Major League Baseball will start their season. In August, September, and in the next few months, hopefully other leagues like the NFL, college football, college basketball, and even some other leagues can start their season. But as of right now that we are in July, we have seen sporting events happen here in the U.S., but now we have seen some of the major sports leagues make a comeback by either resuming or starting their season. So it's just great to see, no matter if it's here in the U.S. or in other parts of the world, that sports has made a comeback. No matter what sport it is, no matter what sporting event or league it is, it's just great to see sports has made a comeback, no matter what sport it is. And no matter what country it is, the people of that country are happy to see that sports has returned, and now there are real sports happening and playing right now. In the last few weeks, and even in the last few months, especially when the coronavirus started, but for the last few weeks, if you watched any type of sport on TV, it was mainly just reruns of games or sporting events that happened in the past. But what was great about it was that you were able to see those classic matchups, those classic games. You got to see some of the best games to ever happen. And it was great to see a lot of those great matchups and games, no matter what league or sporting event it is. Because there's no doubt that no matter what league or sporting event it is, that there's a lot of history, especially within certain leagues. It's great to see those classic games, those classic matchups that were some of the best games or matchups to ever happen in that league or in that sporting event. But after rewatching a lot of classic games or matchups, it was great to see all those events. But it was different from live, real sporting events. No matter what league or sporting event it was. It was different because these games and matchups have already happened in the past. Even though a lot of those games and matchups were great games and matchups, and some of the best games or matchups to ever happen. But it was different from seeing live, real games in sporting events, because it just wasn't the same. Because in the last few weeks, or as of right now, there should have been live, real games, matchups, sporting events, no matter what league or sporting event it is, because certain leagues should have been playing. Certain sporting events should have been happening. And it was just different, especially with not having sports for the last few weeks. But as we got into the summer months, especially once we got into June, and even in the last few weeks, now that we are in July, no matter what country it is around the world, we have started to see sports make a comeback. And in the last few weeks, but especially now that we are in July, we have seen sports make a comeback here in the US. And now we have seen leagues make a comeback after sporting events had already made a comeback. But now all of our major sports leagues here in the US have made a comeback by either starting or resuming their season, and hopefully that continues going into the next few months. No matter what country it is, whether it's the US or it's not the US, hopefully going into the next few months we can see sports continue making a comeback, and we can see more leagues and sporting events happen. Hopefully we can see more leagues start their season, and hopefully we can see more sporting events take place going into the next few months, towards the end of 2020, but especially going into 2021. So right now I'm going to update you with the status of the major sports leagues here in the US. To start off with the NFL, now that we are heading towards the end of July, just like the NFL said in the last few weeks, which was true, training camp was going to begin at the end of July, and it was going to start on time for all 32 teams. And just like we've seen in the last few days, all 32 teams have reported for training camp, and there's no doubt that this training camp and even the 2020 season is going to be different compared to training camps or seasons from the past. Now we're going to have to wait and see what happens going into the next few weeks in regards to all 32 teams and in regards to the coronavirus situation. Because there's no doubt that with the coronavirus situation, anything can change and nothing is a guarantee. And if there is a huge outbreak within a team or within the league, who knows what's going to happen to the 2020 NFL season. And there would be a chance that the 2020 season would be in jeopardy because of the coronavirus situation. But as of right now, training camp has begun for all 32 teams, and training camp is underway. The NFL announced there will not be preseason games, and there will not be a preseason for all 32 teams. And when the 2020 season starts, it's going to be whenever the regular season begins, whether it's the entire regular season or a shortened regular season, or does the regular season start in September like it always does, or is it going to start later on this year? We're going to have to wait and see what happens in regards to the NFL and in regards to the coronavirus, but that is the status for the NFL as of right now. Taking a look at Major League Baseball, the 2020 Major League Baseball season is underway as of right now. An opening day was last week on July 23rd and on July 24th. There's no doubt that the 2020 Major League Baseball season is going to be played and formatted different, especially since this is only going to be a 60-game season. But as of right now, with the start of the 2020 Major League Baseball season within the last week, so far the games have been great. In the beginning of the 2020 season has been great so far, and we're going to have to wait and see what happens going into the next few weeks in regards to the 2020 Major League Baseball season and in regards to the coronavirus. But as of right now, there are definitely teams that you want to keep an eye on, and there will definitely be some surprise teams in the 2020 season if all 60 games get to be played, because it is a short season. And just like the season started within the last week, in a blink of an eye, it'll already be the end of the 2020 Major League Baseball season. But now that the season is underway, I'm looking forward to what happens in regards to the season going into the next few weeks and how certain teams play. But in regards to the coronavirus, if there is a huge outbreak within a team or within the league in regards to the coronavirus, then who knows what's going to happen. We're going to have to wait and see what happens if the coronavirus becomes a major factor in affecting a certain team or the entire league. And if that does happen, the 2020 Major League Baseball season could be in jeopardy. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to the coronavirus and if it happens to affect the Major League Baseball season. But hopefully that does not happen, and it's just great to see that there will be a 2020 Major League Baseball season, and the season is underway as of right now. So that is the status for Major League Baseball. Taking a look at the NBA, as of right now, the 2019-2020 season is underway as of right now down in Orlando. Within the last week, the 22 teams that were down in Orlando were scrimmaging against each other. But as of this week, the season is underway, and some teams have already played their first game out of the 8-game regular season that is going to happen within the next 2 weeks. But as of right now, the season is underway, and before the NBA gets to the playoffs, all 22 teams down in Orlando will play 8 games. There will be an 8-game regular season that will determine the seeding for both the Eastern and Western Conference. And once this 8-game regular season passes by mid-August, then the NBA playoffs will begin. And we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to this 8-game regular season. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where certain teams will stand and what seed they will get, no matter if it's the Eastern or Western Conference. But it's also going to be interesting to see what teams make the playoffs in the Eastern and Western Conference, but especially in the Western Conference. And unfortunately, once this 8-game regular season is over, there are going to be some teams that will be eliminated and their season will come to an end. So I can't wait to see what teams make the playoffs, especially in the Western Conference, and I can't wait to see what certain teams get what seed in the Eastern or Western Conference. But as of right now, the 8-game regular season has begun, and most of the teams have already played their first regular season game, and within the next 2 weeks, all 22 teams down in Orlando will play their 8 games that they have scheduled for the regular season before the playoffs begin. So taking a look at the 8-game regular season schedule for the Nuggets, this is who the Nuggets play in their 8-game regular season schedule. The Nuggets will go against the Heat, the Thunder, the Spurs, the Trailblazers, the Jazz, the Lakers, the Clippers, and the Raptors. So that is the schedule for the Nuggets for who they go against in their 8-game regular season. There's no doubt that the Nuggets do not have an easy way in determining what seed they're going to get in the Western Conference. The Nuggets definitely don't have an easy regular season schedule, especially at the end with having to go against the Lakers and the Clippers. We will have to wait and see what games the Nuggets win and how they play in this 8-game regular season, and we'll have to wait and see what seed they get in the Western Conference. But as of right now, the Nuggets are holding on to the 3rd seed in the Western Conference, and we'll have to wait and see. Are they going to move up or are they going to move down in the seeding in the Western Conference? But there's no doubt that the Nuggets will make the playoffs for this season. And we'll have to wait and see how all 22 teams play in their 8-game regular season, how many games they win, but also what teams make the playoffs, what teams get eliminated, and what teams will get what seed if they make the playoffs in the Eastern or Western Conference. But it's just great to see that the 2019-2020 season has resumed and it's underway as of right now. So that is the status for the NBA. Taking a look at the NHL, on August 1st, the 2019-2020 season will resume for the NHL up in Canada, in Toronto, and in Edmonton. The Eastern Conference teams will play in Toronto, and the Western Conference teams will play in Edmonton. And the NHL has decided that the regular season is over and they are going straight to the Stanley Cup playoffs. So it's just great to see that the NHL has also made a comeback. They also have a plan on resuming the 2019-2020 season up in Canada, in Toronto, and in Edmonton. And on August 1st, the 2019-2020 season will resume, and all the teams contending for a playoff spot in the Eastern or Western Conference will play when the season resumes on August 1st. The Eastern Conference teams will play in Toronto, and the Western Conference teams will play in Edmonton. And it's going to be interesting to see how certain teams play, since the NHL is going straight into the Stanley Cup playoffs. And it'll be interesting to see what team wins the Stanley Cup for the 2019-2020 season. But it's just great to see that the NHL season will resume on August 1st up in Canada. Even though it's going to be pretty similar to the type of plan that the NBA had, the NHL's plan is going to be a little bit different compared to the NBA, especially that the regular season is over and they're going straight into the playoffs. But the NHL's plan is pretty similar to the NBA's plan in how they resume their 2019-2020 season, because they chose a certain city for the teams to go to, and they chose certain teams to go to that city to play out the 2019-2020 season. And there was a reason why they chose a certain city for all the teams to go to and for all the teams to play in, as the 2019-2020 season resumes and plays out going into the next few months. But it's great to see that the NHL has also made a comeback, and that is the status for the NHL. That is also the status for all of the major sports leagues here in the US. Moving on now to Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball announced they have expanded the 2020 postseason, which will include 16 teams, 8 teams from the American and 8 teams from the National League. In the American and in the National League, there will be 3 division winners, 3 second place teams, and 2 wildcard teams. So when the 2020 regular season comes to an end, and when the 2020 postseason begins, there will be a higher chance for more teams in both the American and National League to make the playoffs, since the 2020 regular season is only a 60-game season, and now 16 teams will have a chance at making the postseason. 8 teams from the American League and 8 teams from the National League. Every division in the American and National League will have a division winner that makes it into the playoffs. But the new change will be that the second place team in all of the divisions will also make the playoffs. And you will have 2 wildcard teams. But the biggest change to the 2020 postseason is that whatever team is the second place team in all of the divisions in both the American and National League will make the playoffs. All the time, no matter what season it is, whatever team is in first place in whatever division it is in both the American and National League always makes the playoffs. And then you have the wild card teams. But in the 2020 season, you will have a first place team that wins their division for all of the divisions, but you'll also have the second place teams in all of the divisions make the playoffs, and you will have the 2 wildcard teams. So that is the biggest change for the 2020 postseason, and how the postseason is going to be formatted by the amount of teams that will make it into the playoffs in both the American and in the National League. The Blue Jays announced they will play their home games for the 2020 season in Buffalo, New York. So originally, the Blue Jays could not play their home games at Rogers Center in Toronto. And since the Blue Jays play in Toronto, Canada, they were not allowed to play their home games in Toronto or in Canada, likely because of the coronavirus pandemic that is taking place. So the Blue Jays had to find a new home to play their home games for the 2020 season. So where were the Blue Jays going to play their home games for the 2020 season? Was it going to be at their spring training facility down in Florida? Or was it going to be at one of their AAA ballparks here in the US, or at the AAA ballpark in Buffalo? Or were the Blue Jays going to play all of their games on the road, and when they were supposed to be the home team, then they would be the home team at that ballpark and wear their home team jerseys? We had to wait and see what happened with the status of the Blue Jays and where they were going to play their home games for the 2020 season, since they couldn't play their home games at Rogers Center in Toronto or even in Canada. So, the Blue Jays will play all of their home games in Buffalo for the 2020 season. The Astros announced Justin Verlander is out for the rest of the season with an elbow injury. The Royals announced Patrick Mahomes has become part owner of the Royals. Patrick Mahomes is now the youngest owner in sports history. So what can Patrick Mahomes not do? Regardless if it's on the field or off the field, Patrick Mahomes continues to make history whether he's playing on the field or he's off the field. There's no doubt that Patrick Mahomes is a special player and he's likely going to be one of a kind going into the future. We'll have to wait and see what type of career Patrick Mahomes has in the NFL. But we all know what Patrick Mahomes can do on the field in the NFL. But we're now starting to see what Patrick Mahomes can do off the field, regardless if it's for the NFL or it's for something else. But now that Patrick Mahomes is part owner of the Royals, Patrick Mahomes is going to continue making history, regardless if it's on the field or off the field. And we have already seen Patrick Mahomes make history on the field playing for the Chiefs in the NFL. But in the last few months, and even going into the future, whether it's on the field playing in the NFL or off the field, and even once Patrick Mahomes is retired from the NFL, there's no doubt that Patrick Mahomes is going to continue making history going into the future, regardless if it's on the field or off the field. But there's no doubt that in the last few months and going into the future, Patrick Mahomes has made history, and he's going to continue making history, regardless if it's on the field playing or off the field. After playing 16 seasons, Jose Reyes announced he is retiring from Major League Baseball. So right now I'm going to update you with the current schedule for the Rockies. I'm going to tell you every team the Rockies went up against in the last week and the final scores of those games. And I'm also going to tell you who the Rockies go up against in the next week. To start off, last week the Rockies started the 2020 Major League Baseball season down in Arlington, Texas, in a 3-game series against the Rangers, which started on July 24th. July 24th was the Rangers' home opener, and it was also the debut of the new ballpark the Rangers got, which is Globe Life Field. So in the debut of Globe Life Field for the Rangers, and for opening day on July 24th, which started the 2020 Major League Baseball season, the Rockies lost to the Rangers 1-0. But for the Rangers, even though the Rockies lost to the Rangers got their first win at their new ballpark, which was the first game played at Globe Life Field. So we'll let the Rangers have that win since it was the first game at their new ballpark, which is Globe Life Field. In the second game, the Rockies won the game 3-2, which was a close game. And in the final game of the series, the Rockies won the game 5-2, and the Rockies won the series against the Rangers, and they were able to take 2 out of 3 from the Rangers. This past week, the Rockies went against the Athletics in a 2-game series. In the first game, the Rockies won the game 8-3, and in the second game, the Rockies won the game 5-1. So the Rockies started off the 2020 season on the road with 2 interleague matchups, which started off with a 3-game series against the Rangers and with a 2-game series against the Athletics. And overall, the Rockies did play some great baseball, and they started off the season 4-1 after starting off the 2020 season on the road and having interleague matchups. Believe it or not, 4-1 is one of the best records the Rockies have started off with when they have begun a season. And if you've seen the way the Rockies started off the 2019 season, and it took them 16 games to finally win 4 games, you don't even want to remember the 2019 season. But in the 2020 season, it only took 5 games for the Rockies to win 4 games. So we'll have to wait and see how the Rockies play in the 2020 season and how many games they will win. But so far, this season has started off great for the Rockies. July 31st will be the Rockies' home opener here at Coors Field in Denver, and the Rockies will go against the Padres. This weekend, the Rockies go against the Padres in a 3-game series here at Coors Field in Denver after returning back to Denver from their road trip. And then next week, once it's August, the Rockies will go against the Giants here at Coors Field in a 4-game series. So that is the current schedule for the Rockies. That is all the teams the Rockies went up against in the past week, and that is the final scores of those games, and that's also who the Rockies go up against in the next week. Moving on now to NFL football, Derrick Henry and the Titans have agreed to a 4-year contract. Since the Titans drafted Derrick Henry in 2016, the Titans have a 13-0 record when he rushes for 100-plus yards in a game. LaShawn McCoy and the Buccaneers have agreed to a 1-year contract. Myles Garrett and the Browns have agreed to a 5-year contract extension. Joey Bosa and the Chargers have agreed to a 5-year contract extension. Chris Jones and the Chiefs have agreed to a 4-year contract. Offensive lineman Jason Peters and the Eagles have agreed to a 1-year contract. Kicker Chandler Canzero and the Giants have agreed to a 1-year contract. General manager John Lynch and the 49ers have agreed to a 5-year contract. The Jets traded Jamal Adams and a 4th-round draft pick in 2022 to the Seahawks in exchange for Bradley McDougald, a 1st and 3rd-round draft pick in 2021, and a 1st-round draft pick in 2022. The NFL announced there will not be any preseason games in 2020. July 15th was the deadline for players to sign a new contract or to sign their franchise tender for this season and play under the franchise tag this season. The 2020-2021 franchise tag players includes Zach Prescott, AJ Green, Justin Simmons, Yannick Noku, Joe Dunny, Brandon Sheriff, Hunter Henry, Bud Dupree, Leonard Williams, Anthony Harris, Matthew Jordan, and Shaquille Barrett. All these individual players have signed their franchise tender and they will play under the franchise tag this season. Alex Smith has been cleared to return to full football activity after he suffered a devastating tibia and fibula fracture in 2018. So taking a look at the Washington football team, now that Alex Smith has been cleared to play and to practice, the quarterback competition is definitely going to be interesting for the Washington football team, especially now if they can add Alex Smith to the mix to that quarterback competition, which already includes Dwayne Haskins and Kyle Allen. It will definitely be interesting to see which quarterback would start for the Washington football team for the 2020 season, and we'll have to wait and see who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Washington football team for this season. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see who will be the starting quarterback. But it's going to be interesting to see the quarterback competition between all of these quarterbacks fighting for the starting quarterback position for the Washington football team for this season. Especially now if you can add Alex Smith to the mix. But it's great to see that Alex Smith has returned, especially after that injury that he got while playing for Washington back in the 2018 season. And if you've seen how he got injured, or you've seen that injury that he suffered during that game when he played for Washington back in 2018, that type of injury was almost a career-ending injury for Alex Smith, by the type of injury it was, but also by the way he suffered that injury. But with Alex Smith working his way back to playing in the NFL or for the Washington football team, and how he has been able to make a comeback to return to the NFL or for the Washington football team, it's just great to see that Alex Smith was able to recover from that devastating injury and also make a comeback to the NFL. Regardless of what team Alex Smith plays for, whether it's the Washington football team or it's a different team, or when Alex Smith gets to return and play in the NFL, whether it's this season or going into the future, there's no doubt that Alex Smith would be considered for the award of Comeback Player of the Year, regardless of when Alex Smith plays or for what team he plays for, whether it's this season or going into the future, because of everything Alex Smith had to go through and how he recovered from the injury and how he has made a comeback to the NFL, to play in the NFL and play for an NFL team. So when Alex Smith gets to play at the quarterback position for the Washington football team or for a different NFL team, there's no doubt he would be considered for Comeback Player of the Year. After everything that Alex Smith had to go through to recover from the injury and to now make a comeback to the NFL, we'll have to wait and see if Alex Smith plays for the Washington football team or for a different NFL team this season or going into the future. But there's no doubt that it's just great to see that Alex Smith has made a comeback to the NFL, and at some point it will be great to see that Alex Smith will be able to play at the quarterback position for an NFL team going into the future. The Washington Redskins announced they have officially retired their team name and logo. In the next few weeks, the team will announce what their new team name and logo will be. Washington announced they will go by the Washington football team until a new team name and logo is announced that will replace the Redskins. Washington will keep their same color scheme for their uniforms, and they will replace the Redskins name with Washington and the Redskins logo on the helmets with the individual players' numbers. So as of right now, Washington is going to go by the Washington football team, and we'll have to wait and see what new name Washington will go by and what their new logo will look like. We'll have to wait and see when their new team name and logo will be announced. It will likely be sometime in the next few months, but it will very likely be after the 2020 season comes to an end. And as of right now, Washington will go by the Washington football team for the 2020 season, but they do have plans on changing their team name and logo by next season, and sometime in the next few months or going into this off season before the start of the 2021 season, the Washington football team should have a new team name and a new logo, and we'll have to wait and see what their new team name and logo will be, after being the Washington Redskins and now being the Washington football team. Moving on now to end the show, what to watch for this week in sports: the Rockies, Major League Baseball, the Nuggets, NBA basketball, the Avalanche, NHL hockey, NFL training camp. Moving on now, on the next show, I will talk about the coronavirus, Major League Baseball, NBA basketball, and NHL hockey. I hope you all have a great week. Tune in to the next All Sports with Gerardo show next week. I want to say thank you to everybody that listens to All Sports. Subscribe or like my pages on social media at All Sports with Gerardo. Until next time, this is Gerardo.